So I would wait maybe a couple of minutes, people are still joining in before we start. So I think we should start with the introduction while people are joining. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining today for this Art for the Environment conversation. My name is Camilla Palestra, and I'm the Associate Curator at the Center for Sustainable Fashion and Curator of the Art for the Environment conversation series at UAL. The series expands on the Art for the Environment Residency Programme, which was launched in 2015 by Professor Lucy Orta, with the aim to explore environmental and social concerns that define the 21st century through art and design. And thank you, Rachel, for sharing the link in the chat for those of you who are interested to know more about the program. Today, I'm very pleased to be introducing our fantastic guest, Jane Rushton, Director at the Fondazione Berengo, Noemi Niederhauser, artist, UAL alumna, and former AER resident at Barango Studio, and Koen Vanmechelen, artist and long-term collaborator with Barango Studio and Glastress. Jane is the director at the Fondazione Berengo, which was founded by Adriano Berengo, the visionary behind Barango Studio, an innovative glass studio on Murano, bringing art to glass. Jane is a transplanted New York financial services lawyer with a passion for the arts, who now lives and works in Venice. At the foundation, she also works with established artists and museums in organizing exhibitions, including the much acclaimed Glastress. Noemi Niederhauser is based in Lausanne in Switzerland. She's a ceramist, designer, mycologist, visual artist, curator, and the co-founder of the artist-run space Adash in Athens. She holds an MFA in Fine Arts from Central St. Martin's and previously studied ceramic design at the Applied Arts School of Vevey in Switzerland. She is currently a studio director at Alice Lab Architecture Department, EPFL in Lausanne, and a ceramic design teacher in Bern. She's a 2017, 2019, and 2021 recipient of Pro Helvetia research grants and awards. And finally, Koen Vanmechelen works across a multiple of disciplines, situating his practice at the confluence of art, science, philosophy, and community. As an eternal migrant, he travels the world, looking for answers to fundamental questions that touch on issues which are both timeless and acutely relevant today: identity, diversity, globalization, and human rights. His quest and interdisciplinary projects invite other migrants to work together and create an awareness and a movement of communities around the world. Together, they reflect on the global legacy of the human animal and explore the different ways we choose to live and evolve together. And now, before handing it over to our speakers, just a couple of housekeeping information. You should have your mic and camera off for a better streaming. The conversation will last overall an hour. There will be the 3 presentations first, followed by a Q&A. And you are encouraged to use the chat box to put your questions at any time. And during the Q&A, you can also raise your hand and ask your question in person if you prefer. And then just a reminder that the conversation is being recorded and will be made available on the YouTube channel of the postgraduate community at UAL. And finally, a big thank you to my colleagues and to the postgraduate community team at UAL. So I would hand it over to you, Jane, now for your presentation. Thank you. Let me just upload it for you.
Okay. I don't know whether you can see me now, but good morning, everyone. Good morning from New York. I'm in New York visiting, and I'm on my way back to Venice tomorrow. And as you heard, I am the director of Fondazione Barango. And I was asked to come today to speak to you about, okay, Camilla, how do I move that on? Okay. About Barango Studio, who we are, what we do, and how we got involved, or our participation with the London College Art for the Environment Residency Programme, and the other residencies that we have sponsored, which add to the social fabric of our world. So Barango Studio was established over 30 years ago by Adriano Berengo, who's a Venetian. The studio is a glass furnace in Murano and works with skilled glass masters in producing contemporary art and glass. Adriano's goal when he began Barango Studio was to keep the Venetian tradition of glassmaking alive by marrying contemporary art and glass, and therefore preserving the cultural heritage of glassmaking. So over the past 3 decades, Adriano has invited over 300, this is a picture of our furnace, over 300 artists to come work with us in Murano, including some well-known names such as Ai Weiwei, and I'll do it from here, Camilla, Ai Weiwei, Thomas Schute, Laura Prevost, and other artists. How do we move to the next one? Okay. Here is work that Ai Weiwei did in our furnace in 2017. You can see the picture on the left, that's Ai Weiwei, and on the right, that's Adriano Berengo. And the sculpture here, I'm not sure if you can see the details or not, is a beautiful sculpture in the shape of a chandelier, and it's made with Murano glass and was made in our studio. This is another work that we are now doing for Ai Weiwei. As you can see from the picture on the right, is enormous. When it's completed, it will be over 9 feet tall, long, will hang from the ceiling. And here, let me do this. Thank you. There. And okay, I don't know who's on here, but there. It's composed of thousands of small cast glass bones, organs, skulls. You can see in the detail on the left, there is a human skull, a skull which looks like it's a bird, a skull which looks like a lion or a cougar. So this chandelier will be shown for the first time in Rome in July of this year. We've also worked with Tony Craig, who's considered to be one of the most important living sculptors. Tony Craig is British, but he lives and works in Wuppertal, Germany. There he is in our furnace. And this is a work we recently completed for Sean Scully. That's Murano stack, is a stack of glass cubes, which is 6 meters tall. Here are works by Thomas Schute. Thomas Schute is known for the heads and that, okay, I'm lost here. Camilla, my presentation disappeared. So let me see if I can go back.
Let me try to go back.
Thank you. So Thomas Schutte has worked with us over the years, and he's famous for these heads and images. Okay, let me, 3, 4. Okay, let me do it from here. Okay. And during the last Venice Biennale of Art, we worked with artists who represented 2 different countries in the Biennale. One was Laura Prevost, and she represented France. And here is Laura and Adriano Berengo again, in one of her works called The End of a Dream. We also worked with Renate Bartelmann, and this is the Austrian pavilion. She represented Austria. And there are over 300 bright red roses that are pierced by blades or razors. It was really a very dramatic presentation. So what is Fondazione Barango and how does it fit in? Well, Adriano founded Fondazione Barango in 2014 with the aim of putting together an cultural institution that would present exhibitions and provide educational opportunities. And Glass Dress does an interdisciplinary program of special projects in collaboration with artists, designers, architects. In 2016, it sponsored the first retrospective of the late Dame Zaha Hadid. In 2017, we entered into a partnership with the Global Campus of Human Rights to explore how art could be used to raise awareness of human rights issues. This partnership led to a wonderful project by the artist curator, Koen Vanmechelen, who you will be hearing from in a few minutes, and hopefully he will be telling you about this project. And the project with Fondazione Berengo and the Global Campus goes on. We are participating in a program that they have established to look into the future of Venice. In 2020, Fondazione Berengo dedicated an exhibition to women artists who had collaborated with the studio over its 30-year history. It was called Unbreakable: Women in Glass. And it was curated by Koen Vanmechelen, along with Nadia Romain. And this is the image of Unbreakable. And this image was also done by Koen. And one of the things that Fondazione Barango has done is a show called Glass Dress. And it was launched in 2009 as a collateral event of the Biennale. And today it's the world's leading showcase for contemporary art and glass. And now it's reached its 6th edition in Venice, and it's been presented in prominent museums all over the world. It's presently in Boca Raton, Florida, which is the second Glass Dress there. It's been in Stockholm, MAD, the Museum of Arts and Design in New York, the Beirut Exhibition Center. And this September, we are on our way to the State Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg. In 2013, we partnered with the London College of Fashion and the Wallace Collection in London and presented Glass Dress, White Light, White Heat. And this was 2013 was Glass Dress, White Light, White Heat was an opportunity to meet many of the English artists, some of the YBAs, and we also met Lucy Orta, who is responsible for our participation here today. So here are a couple of quick views of Glass Dress. This is 2009, and the work on the left is a young Korean artist, Soyeon Cho, who lives in Toronto. On the right are cast glass tires by Robert Rauschenberg. This is Glass Dress in the Palazzo Franchetti. These are works by an artist, Karen Lamont. These figures are cast in glass. And a chandelier by Joana Vasconcelos, Portuguese artist. This was 2015, where we paired with the State Hermitage Museum in a glass dress called Glass Dress Gothica. This is a view of the Palazzo Franchetti, where the Fondazione Barango maintains its offices now, and a sculpture that we sponsored by Yame Plenza in the garden. And in 2019, we went back to Murano. We took the show to our Fondazione Berengo art space, which you see here now. It is an old abandoned glass furnace, which we have used almost the way it was as an exhibition space. And this is a view of Unbreakable, which is also held in the furnace. So Adriano has long since recognized that one of the ways to preserve the traditions of Murano is to see that they are passed on to younger generations of artists and artisans. So we're always looking for ways to involve students and emerging artists in our glassmaking world in Murano. As a result of our partnership with the London College and Glass Stress, which I mentioned, we were introduced to Professor Lucy Orta, who has been working with us in the furnace since that time. She was one of the artists, of course, in Unbreakable. And during the pandemic, she came to Murano and presented us with a different kind of mask. We were also pleased to be able to host Noemi Niederhauser at Barango Studio in 2016 as a result of this program. And on the right, you see Lucy in one of her masks. And it really made a difference as everybody was walking around with COVID masks to see these beautiful, bright, shining, gorgeous masks. We have sponsored other residents in the furnace. Patricia Bidnowski, who's from Brazil, came to us in 2016, and she prepared a work again in 2020. She was back, called Home, and it was an installation of 20 glass-blown pieces which were blown into house-shaped metal, the construction changed to a roof. And here is a picture of the frame in the furnace and the glass as it was blown into the metal structure. This is a technique that was used for Venetian lanterns hundreds of years ago. And this is a picture of the entire installation during the show Unbreakable. Marlene Barrett was our most recent resident, and she came to us in a partnership with the German Institute of Venetian Studies, which is in Venice, and she did several works. This is a look at one of her works, a whole installation. It's a better close-up of some of her work. So Marlene's residency was so successful that she has been invited to do a solo exhibition in a private gallery in Venice called Spazio Sallenbach, and that exhibition will open in November of this year. We've also done a scholarship program with the Mossy Foundation and have had three, interesting that they're all women, but have had three women residents from the Mossy Foundation, which is an Italian foundation, and the Mossy families make beautiful wines, and they sponsor students to give them a chance to learn some of the techniques and the crafts of the Venetian area. So that pretty much sums up what we do and who we are, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you for this journey across all the activities and initiative of the foundation. It's really great to see. I'm sure there will be a moment to go back to some of the projects you just explained now. I will pass it over to Noemi though now. Noemi, over to you.
Yes, I'm just clicking. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
We can see you.
Okay, okay, great. Okay, I will just share my folder. Okay, so hello everyone. Noemi Niederhauser, and as Camilla said, I'm based now in Switzerland, in Lausanne. I used to be based in between Athens and Lausanne, but due to the situation, I think, yeah, like everybody, we had to stay in one single place. So yeah, I was a resident in 2016 at Art for the Environment with the Berengo studio in Murano. And I will just show you quickly a bit the work I did there and a bit some other projects I've done so far. So, as Camilla said, yeah, I'm a trained designer and I did a master in fine art at St. Martin's. I also studied ceramic and I'm actually growing a mushroom culture in Senegal. So that's why it says that I'm an ecologist. I also used to live in Athens for 3 years and I co-founded an artist friend space there where I curate shows, where we do residencies and where we invite other artists. Okay. I have to say as a broad spectrum that all those sides of my practice, artistic practice, often involve materials and experimental process around them. I often do projects that are in between sculpture, functional pieces, and most of the time they are based in a specific location and deal with a specific context. It's also very important for me that I analyze what impact those projects have and what ideas and maybe alternative perspectives they give. As Camilla said, aside of my own project, I'm also teaching at the architectural department in Lausanne at the Polytechnic School, and I'm teaching ceramic design in Bern as well in Switzerland. Okay, so this is Melting for You is a project I did. It seems a while ago now for me, but it was 5 years ago in Murano. And basically, it was a way to trace the journey of glass from sand, recycled glass, through an industrial process and a manufacture process by blowing it in Murano. So I actually, the glass piece that you see is basically made of empty and used wine bottles that have been reblown in specific shapes in Murano. And the whole project is those sculptural functional objects and as well a video that really traces the whole process. And I put you the link on my website because it's too long to show it now, but the video is really part also as a way to show what's happening behind the scene and where the material comes from and which process it goes through. So here, just a few screenshots. So the 3 images, the 2 top images and the one on bottom left are in the industrial factory in Switzerland where they do those wine bottles. And after that, I went to Murano and made them reblown, mouse blown in specific shapes. And at the end, you have a sculptural functional object that in the final shape recalls all the process. So the metal structure is also a way to recall the kiln in Murano, and the glass bottle, its shape is an enlargement of one really important tool that was used in the industrial factory in Switzerland. So here you have pieces that really have a link between those 2 processes. So that was my, my project in Murano. And now I will show you other sides of my practice. So this is a short overview of the studio space that I, with a couple of friends, so artist friends, we are a team of 4 women artists. We renovated a house in the center of Athens, which was really a traditional house of the city that was totally falling apart. And we did an organic space that can host events, that can host residencies, different type of projects. So basically it's a house that works as a shell that can incorporate different types of ideas. And so here is just an overview of some things that happened. And also it's very important for us that it's not a bubble on its own, but to really connect it with the city. So for example, we did this project called Time Takes Time, which invited graphic designers from Athens, but also from other parts of the world, from Belgium, from Netherlands, from Switzerland, from very different places, to come together to work in different area around the city of Athens, to open those to the public while the process was going on, and at the end they all came together to do a publication. So this is also a way to show the process happening behind something that's being produced. And it's also a way to connect really to the city. And that's a project. So also I'm often working on projects that are long-term. So as the art space, this one is also another project that's going on long-term since 2019. I was invited in Senegal to do a research, and I developed, through actually by chance meeting some people, I started to develop the cooperative of women there, a way to design pieces out of mycelium growth. So this is a culture of mushroom. And basically it's a form that's already existing since a couple of years. But my role in it is, instead of growing it in any types of shapes, as you can see on the bottom left, I designed specific mold in which to grow it. And those mold, once we harvest the mushrooms, they can be used for packaging elements, sculptural elements. So this is a project that's really an ongoing and long-term project. And this is just a view of some sculptural element that we've made with it. And for the last project I wanted to show you, it's a recent one. It's a project called Zimurgi, which is the art of fermentation. And this is a very functional one. It's really a way to understand how to make cooking tools without cooking tools and ways of transforming food without the need of electricity nor fuel. So I'm really looking back at traditions doing this. And I designed 3 containers, same size, same design, but with different endings that allow different purposes. So one is a vinegar crock, so you can put in old wine like the last bit of a bottle of wine that's not being drank. And after a process of fermentation and letting it stay, it becomes vinegar. There is a fermentation crock that we know in various countries. I know Germany has a lot, Switzerland as well, traditionally. So it's a way to be able to keep some vegetables over winter, for example. And the last one is a fridge. So this one is it's actually a way to cool down and keep vegetables by having a double wall ceramic piece, and in the middle water or wet sand. So basically those 3 containers allow you to keep food or to transform it without anything else than actually the property of the material, which is ceramic. And the last images, and just to tell you, the pattern, the blue pattern that you see is actually also done by fermentation. So I kind of make a weird mixture, and with fermenting things inside, and I let it grow on my pieces before to fire it. So it's absolutely not done by me, but it's really done by the process, and it was a way to recall what's happening inside of it. So yeah, I was maybe short, but that's all, and you can ask me any question afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Noemi. Really, really fascinating, fantastic work. So nice to see also your development from the residency with us, continuing with the interest into this process of transformation. We will have questions at the end. Just a brief, quick question from Lucy. Are they commercialized?
Not yet.
The last update? Not yet.
Not yet, but soon, yes.
Fantastic. So I will pass it over to Koen now for his presentation before we join in all together for the Q&A.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Jane, good morning, I still think. I try to take you over my work in a couple of minutes, which is not so easy, but then I start again really quickly by saying my work is, I show you this picture by saying this is not a chicken. What you see is actually a crossbreeding of 3 different races of chickens, Belgium, French, and England. I take you on the story of the chicken first. The chickens comes from one source in the Himalaya, Nepal, India. And by human interest, by mutation manipulation, it went all over the world. And here you see a schedule. In every country, we start to make a chicken that tells something about the country. So this is quite fascinating because the chicken was not only for producing, but it was also a symbolical statement. I give this example. This is a poulet de Brest from France. And this one is red in the head, white in the body, and has blue legs. So it's the French flag. So in every country, you find a chicken that tells something about the country. And so my story starts there because I was fascinated that it was also a cultural object. And I started in 1999 a crossbreeding program by crossing a Belgian chicken with a French one. And then with that crossing, I went to England. I did a big show in the Listen Gallery in London. And with that result, I went to America. And then now we are 25 generations further. Fascinating about this is that I found myself in confrontation with a living object, a living sculpture. And on the one side, the chicken gives itself to this project. On the other side, it's revolting because it's living. And I have to do an investigation in this kind of work. So it leads me to the question, where do we come from? And how do we deal with living, with life in itself? So I discovered that every little single thing of this chicken we already used in our society, thinking about medication is made from chicken eggs, but also 80% of the world population is eating chickens. So what is our position if we work with other lives, you know? What is our position? I come to this image, for example, and then the first time you see glass is an important element in my work, with the question, are we poisoning the world or are we fertilizing it? And so my work is always on that level between culture and nature. Here in this big installation in Guangzhou, in the Triennale, I let people crossing through a jungle to look at the jungle fall, the source of life, and that was 45 degrees, and it was 500 square meter jungle in the museum. And when you stepped out of this, you came in a room which was a refrigerator of 5 degrees, where all the eggs are lying. So you come from natural life into cultivate life. And then at the end, you go to another room where you see a human being sitting in a video, a Nepalese, on the border between society and jungle. And I think that's very important because that's the moment that domestication started. And I made a huge human incubator to stress people with the idea that we have to rethink our environment and the way that we are dealing with it. So big questions, I think. So I started to think about fertility, for example. I came to the conclusion that fertility is coming from outside. And that was for me important. So I started in my studio the Open University of Diversity, which is actually a place where we invite people of different professions together to think about evolution. And so that kind of think tank leads today to a real school where very recently we built La Museum, where we invited young people to think about unthinkable experiments. So in the Opundi, which is the Open University of Diversity, I developed 4 big foundations, and I will tell you a few things about it, but it will lead us too far if I will talk about everything. But crucial is, for example, the walking egg, which is a project that I started in the furnace of Adriano Berengo 30 years ago. And so first of all, it was a sculpture. It was an egg, a transparent egg with iron legs. And my philosophy around that sculpture is that you need always strong legs to conquer the world, but the fertility of an egg and the egg in itself can be very fragile. So the Walking Egg Foundation now, today, it's about real fertility. And I started to have a think tank with different professors around the globe who are specialized in fertility. And one of the things that we develop is the Sotaba project. It's a project where I bring bulls from different countries, for example, Kenya, into a community in Tanzania. And if you do that, you bring another animal from somewhere else to fertilize actually the cattle. You really come to a very social artistical project, because I see it as an adoption. And when the bull is dying, I get the skin, I get the tools, I get the certificate, and it becomes a piece of art given by the name of the bull. And when I can sell this, into the art world, I sponsor again bulls in different communities. Today we are doing this in Ethiopia, in Zimbabwe, in South Africa, in Kenya, and actually in big parts of Africa. The second foundation, it's a very important one. So it's the Cosmopolitan Chicken research project. It's about immunity. And it all started here with, again, a piece in glass, which I call the accident. And the accident is a piece of glass which is fixed on a real chicken, because you never know when the real meeting is taking place. And I always illustrate it by this picture. It's me and a very famous geneticist, human geneticist, Georgia Kassiman, where I started the foundation with, and where we did the research on the chicken. And what we saw after 20 years of making this crossbreeding, we could make the Book of Genome, which I think is a very beautiful piece of art. It's if you think today that they can make an RNA vaccine against the pandemic, this book is so crucial in this for this technique. You can read the genome of a chicken, and we saw that there is 30 million DNA. So there are so many copies now because of the crossbreeding that we have a sustainable chicken that can live in rural areas. For example, for Africa, South America. And here you see an installation that I made in Zimbabwe in the National Gallery there. And then you see how did I make a combination with, first of all, the chickens who are on the floor, and on the second floor, big nests are hanging with the desire of eggs that are coming out. And in reality, this project now went in different parts of Africa, because by bringing in the cosmopolitan chicken, we created sustainable chickens for the communities. Also, this installation I built together with the Future of Hope and with the different communities. And that brought me to this statement, and I think it's a very important statement. The global only exists by the generosity of the local. And I think this is something that we are forgotten. LifeBank Awakener was in the Biennial of Venice during the Glastress 2015 Gothica. Jane also made a reference to this one. And I was creating a LifeBank in cooperation with Slow Food. Slow Food, who is working on sustainable food. And here you see a sculpture of big hands in bronze with the fragile glass chick in one hand and seeds in the other hand. And it was actually in a formal bank in Palazzo Franchetti on the 3rd floor. And in the bank, I put all the seeds who were forgotten. And I think, you know, if you make a statement like this and you bring life into a kind of commercial bank, which it was, where real money was there, and you change it with life, you say a story that there is no economical reality if there is no life. And so in my work, it's always this kind of thing. So very recently, I made these medusas, which are also dealing, I think, with life and healing. And they were part of this installation as well. At the same time, I was bringing a camel into Venice under the title of the Life Bank. And why the camel? Because I discovered 20 years ago, together with scientists, that the camels are camelids, like llamas and alpacas, has a double immune system. And through mushrooms, and I saw it in a formal lecture now, I found a system to increase the product of the mushroom and the product and the egg. So by breeding mushrooms on the compost of a llama, of a camel, you know, the proteins are going into the mushrooms, and you can give the leftover of the mycelium to the chicken. So in the same biennial, then we invited a cook, and we made a party so that we can eat the mushrooms and the eggs. So it was like a triptych of different levels that people could really be aware of this economical circle, I think, because again, it is for the communities. And I now working with communities in Detroit, in Zimbabwe, in Russia and Siberia, and it always starts to look for a local chicken, to find local breeders, and to make this circle. After, I think now 25 years or 30 years practice, you know, I started very recently La Biomista here in the studio where I am now. And La Biomista, it means actually the mix of life, is a word that I invented, you know. It's on the border of a city, Genk in Belgium, and in the middle, just between the city and the only national park that we have. And actually the whole park is a kind of discussion of our behavior, behaving as human beings in the conflict of nature and domestication. Here you see a few images of the studio. It's an old building it was a formal zoo. From the zoo director, I transform it into the foundations, and then you see a little bit further the battery, which I made together with a very famous architect here, Mario Botta. And here you see the building, and actually the building is already telling the conflict between culture and nature, because there is a big cage in the front with birds who are almost extinct, and on top, you see this in this picture a little bit better, there is a huge cage with the eagle. So for me, the conflict is that we are in between in the studio. And I take you now, this is the cage in the front, and then this is the inside of the studio. And you see the inside of the studio, there are different installations where glass is also very important. I think for me, glass are the elements of life. And when I'm making works or making installation, the element of life is always present. We also have a lab where we do a lot of experience, not only with the animals, but we also invite people, you know, to come for different projects that we do with the community. This is under the studio, because when you leave, you come into a huge park of 24 hectares of ground. And in that park, very recently, we have one of the llama winter. And one of the lamas, sorry, and the name is Lama Winter, because now she is the lama who is making medication through that double immune system against COVID. And it will be the only medication in Europe, not a vaccine, but a medication against COVID. So 20 years I started with these lamas, and now with a group of scientists, they found the medication against COVID. It will be on the market, I think, in 1 year. And actually today it's the first patient who will have this medication. So it's actually the mix of life where everybody is coming together, also in different installations and performances. And like I said, the chicken was a really breakthrough through his crossbreeding and had a lot of DNA and can sustain in the communities. And we did a project in Ethiopia, and there is standing actually a piece of art, but it's a real form inside under this title, "The Global Only Exists by the Generosity of the Local." So inside in this form, you first see video installation where are people reading in the book of genomes, and actually together with the World Health Organization, the WHO in Geneva, we are working on spreading this chicken in many parts of Africa. And like Jane said, you know, we're working on this human rights pavilion, which I presented in the Biennial of Venice in the studios of Adriano Berengo under this installation, Collective Memory. So glass pieces, the fragility of life on the books of human rights. Each book is carrying another sculpture, maybe a crossbreeding, maybe a leg, maybe an egg that still has to come out. And we know very well how fragile life is. And during now the 31st of this year, you know, in New Year's night, we did a performance in the studios of Barango by smashing the virus. And I restored this virus in our lab here in my studio, waiting until we can be free again. So the conclusion of my lecture is that every organism is looking for another to survive, I think. So we have to take care of our nature and our environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Koen. Really fascinating presentation, very dense. I appreciate that it's very difficult to condense all the projects in 10 minutes. But thank you, really incredible overview. And hopefully there will be some questions from the attendees to dig more into some specific projects. I would ask Jane and Noemi to join us with their camera and mic on. And the attendees to put any questions they have in the chat box, or just raise their hand, ask the question in person. A comment from Lucy in the chat: incredible journey, Koen. So fascinating to see the links between your work and the humanitarian foundations and how they feed into each other. Any question, anyone? I have a question for you, Koen. You really briefly touched upon the Labiomista project. While getting to know more about it, I was wondering, in fact, if you ever thought about residencies, inviting resident artists to the Labiomista, to this sort of a microcosm that you created there.
Yes, you know, this is very recently, because for me it's a piece of art in evolution. So I started with this huge project because it's really huge in 3 years ago. This is the 3rd year that it is open, and actually it's we are not focusing only on artists in residence, for example. It's not, but we are working on a plan which we opened this year, and it's called La Museum. And La Museum means, if you think back to the old library of Alexandria, La Museum, where where artists, scientists, biologists, social entrepreneurs were coming together and to find new things. So start the unthinkable experiment. That means that young people between 16 and 26, we are inviting them together with different universities around the globe, and we're still asking for universities to join us, and to let them come and to be in a box in the middle of nature, looking at storks who are breeding, because this is a place really between it's called protected paradise. It's between the jungle and civilization, and to let people think about something unthinkable. And then with a group of experts, you know, around the table, around 10 to 15 people from different professions, we will look which kind of projects can be very useful to think further and to work further into the future. So yes, we are working on this, and we just started, but I think it will develop in a much brighter way in the coming years, for sure. Yeah.
Fantastic. And I'm sure it would be interesting for the Art for the Environment program to be connected to the Lab Misa. So it will be wonderful to keep on conversing about possible collaboration with UAL. So there is a question from Lucy to Noemi. Can you explain more about how you might commercialize your work? The lamps you made in 2016 and the jars, for example, and how does the mushroom project continue without you?
Okay, so 3 different things. So the lamp that I made at Berengo in 2016, it's already, but I made quite a lot, or they made at the studio quite a lot of the glass pieces. So now I can produce a limited series of it, and it's actually already in a few galleries in Switzerland. So it goes slowly. It's really not done to make a mass production. That was not the aim. And the jars, but this is, I'm now starting to collaborate with a restaurant to design, to change a bit the shapes and everything, but basically to use the same design. So this is also a way to provide publicity, but also to really make people understand how to use them firsthand. And the mushroom project, well, that's a tricky question, because actually the cooperative of women in Senegal, when I met them, they already knew the whole process of cultivating mushrooms. So my part in it is in a way very little. It does not need me to exist. It's just like in the whole circular process, because to make it short, the mushroom grow on sorgho, and sorgho is a very common and traditional cereal in this part of Senegal. And this cereal, basically first it's grown to produce food, and afterwards from the steam they make bioethanol. But once you make bioethanol from the steam, it remains enough sugar that allow mushroom to grow. So it's a full cycle. And when you grow mushroom on those cereal waste, once you harvest usually twice maximum, you can put it back into earth, and it's a compost. So it's a full circle. And what I'm doing is adding a layer within this circle, which means that when you grow mushroom, it produces a very hard and solid material, because the mushroom creates very tight net around the cereal waste, and this is used for packaging. So at the moment we are developing this packaging with a distillery, an alcohol factory in a village next to the mushroom farm, to make the packaging for the bottles for them. So in a way, the project can continue without me, and it functions without me, and I'm just adding in the whole circle a way to enhance the potential of the product, of the material. So I don't know if I answered it clearly or not.
Yeah, and I guess this answered also a question that I had thinking about your statement for the Pro Helvetia 2021 studio residency, where you say, I believe that living organisms are the factories that build new designs in regards to contemporary challenges of resource scarcity and sustainability.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wanted to ask, how do you position yourself within this cycle and process of transformation? And it's exactly what you just explained. Any other questions from the attendees? I wanted to ask Jane if there is any educational projects, any forthcoming educational projects you want to talk about, and also many of our participants are students, art students. So if there is a way how a student can get in contact with a studio and come and participate in a residency outside of the Art for the Environment, for instance, or other schemes.
Sorry. We don't have a formal residency program in place right now, primarily due to the last year of COVID, and this continuing year of not great mobility. We're thinking about it. We don't have any student projects. We somehow wind up with a lot of, at different times, a lot of students in the furnace. A couple of years ago, and one of the people is on the call now, a couple of years ago, I did a presentation in Sofia, Bulgaria, and brought back to Venice and one of the professors, and he brought with him 3 high school students, and they were all students who were learning how to work in glass, and that was really fantastic for all of us. And so we will look to starting our residency program again in the future. That's all.
Thank you. Thanks, Jane.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah. There's time for a last question from Patty to Koen. How difficult were the logistics of moving different living organisms between the geographies? And have you had any arrangement or help with the customs? And there's a follow-up question from Lucy about the ethics of keeping animals in captivity.
Yeah, there I am again. Okay, first of all, the logistics. The logistics are terrible. I can tell you, because I'm bringing living species from one place to another. So I have somebody in my studio who is doing nothing else than that. I mean, for example, to bring the chicken to the biennial of Russia, of Moscow, for example, it's a hell of a job. But you know, for me, everything is art. That means that also this way of finding a way to bring it to different countries, there is a lot of questions there that you can come up, you know, like migration, for example. I discovered, you know, it was as difficult for a chicken to travel from Africa to Europe was as difficult as an African who has to travel to Europe. So for me, it is a challenge to do it, and it is a kind of journey that belongs to the project, because with every project that I do, I also have I make a kind of what I call Cosmo Cafés, where I invite people around the table and to talk about migration. And if you start a project like the Cosmopolitan Chicken, for example, which is about crossbreeding, you tackle all these difficult issues like migration, globalization, genetic engineering, cloning. So everything is involved, is a reflection on life. And when you do this in art, of course, then you don't talk about the chicken itself, but you talk about a human. So it's a kind of an anthropology study that you do So through the customs is one of them. And it's also the question of why are there borders and why should we keep them? I don't think, for example, today, if we don't restore our social behavior, for example, we can't restore the planet, then climate change will be very difficult to talk about. And let's say this is one of the big topics that we first have to solve out, and then there is a chance that we can save nature. That's my answer on that. The following question, it's about the ethics, So it's a very good question. But I think, with ethics it's like this. Artists are there in the world, and probably also other professions like science, we push the boundaries, and it's a push to the boundary of the society. And when the society answer, then there is evolution. So I think if you don't do anything, you never can raise up a discussion. I'm always make the discussion about domestication, and with my projects, I have the feeling that I liberate the animal from domestication. First of all, by crossbreeding, you open up the genetics of this chicken, which was in a monocultural situation. So the question that I do is say, oh, let's crossbreed, let's mix, because when you crossbreed, you open the genetics and you stimulate fertility, immunity, and diversity. But if you don't show the cage where they're in and the boundaries, you can't make the discussion of this time. I have several projects where I have this kind of push, where we come in conflict with ourselves, but we have to see the conflict. Otherwise, we never understand the conflict.
Thank you. I guess it's a very complex and problematic issue.
But a lot of times I do always this kind of.
Yeah, and we're running over time, unfortunately, here, so we need to conclude here. Jane, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I do. I just wanted to add to my answer before about residencies and internships at Barango Studio. So if someone would have a look, if you're interested, have a look at our website. And there is an email address, comunicazione@barango.com, and send us a note. And I will personally get back to any student that is looking to do a residency or program with us.
Wonderful. This is wonderful to know. And we actually shared all the links to websites, so people can go back and do further research. And as I said, the conversation is being recorded and will be available online. So thank you again to our guests, to Jane, Noemi, and Koen. Thank you to all the attendees for your questions, and hopefully you'll be able to join us for our last conversation on the 9th of June. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Lucy.
Hi.
Yeah, I asked them. Oh, they all left. Oh, even Noemi. I asked them to stay if they could stay a little bit at the end. That you would be there to say hi. They've left.
Yeah. No problem.
Okay.
Yeah, great. It was really fascinating. It was great to have that insight.
Yeah.
Jane and
Yeah, no, it was really good. I guess the time sometimes is a bit short, but it's more to have an overview, especially with, you know, certain projects by Koen, as the ethics issue that you raised. They are quite complex, complex aspects, kind of critical aspects as well. But yeah, it's I mean, it's the time we have, so it was very good. It's very good overview.
Yeah, and hopefully in the future maybe we can have another residency there. So, you know, it's good to have the conversation because we can always link it.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think it would be interesting. Okay, good.
Super.
That's it then.
See you soon.
Yeah, see you soon. Bye, Lucy.
Bye.